maybe because I lived in a civil war and because I had all these experiences, I'm very, very aware of life. So I'm extremely aware that we will die and it's not forever. And actually, I'm over 50, so it's going downhill from now. So what do you want to achieve with your life? And then go for it. Because nothing worse than sort of unfulfilled potential. And I think it's much, much stronger to have failed or to have upset someone, to have been there, lived and been a part of something than just going with the flow.
In this episode, we welcome Anne-Louise Thon, a seasoned investor and VC.
Join us as she shares her insights as to what makes or break the yes or no to getting funded by her VC as a startup today. She also shares her adventures from experiencing different cultures around the world. Enjoy. Here we are on another episode. We're here today with Anne-Louise Thon, and partner and co-founder of SDG Invest and also Vaar Ventures. You've also had some other titles, including board member, advisor, university lecturer, executive, amongst many others. Very impressive resume. Thanks for joining us today and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, in particular for this amazing introduction. Even I get a bit scared.
Well, it is pretty impressive, I have to say.
Thank you very much.
And going off of that, I'm also curious, if you look a little bit back at your journey, can you think of something like what has pushed you or what has brought you to a place of such sort of like high performance and accomplishment in your career? If you kind of like reflect back, is there any moment that sticks out or anything that's kind of like been driving you along the way?
Yeah, there's a moment that sticks out. And I think when I'm not exactly a youngster, you think of your career, but you don't plan it. I didn't plan it. It just happened. And then when you get to my age and look back, you can see that it's a puzzle and all the puzzle pieces fit together. So that's really nice when that happens. But I think there was a moment that changed my career. And that was, I was working in advertising in London around 1999. So long time ago. And I had this sort of epiphany that I wasn't doing enough good for the world. And then I volunteered and I went with an organization called VSO, Voluntary Service Overseas. And I signed up for that and got sent to Zimbabwe for 2 years. And they put me in a position.
For 2 years?
Yeah, I know. Wow. Yeah, and I made £60 a month in salary, which was a lot, a big change from what I was used to. But that was because you had to go local. So you were living like a local person. And the average, I think the minimum wage was £60 at the time.
Wow.
Damn.
Yeah. So that was tough, but it was fun. So what they did was they took your skills and they placed you somewhere where they thought you'd be useful. So in my case, I was really good at writing and I was very good at finances. So they put me in an NGO that was overlooking the government. And if you know anything about Zimbabwean history, it's been really tumultuous and there's been war and there's been civil war and, genocide and all sorts. So it was really a life-changing experience for me to come down there and write reports about what the government was doing. And it was a little bit dangerous, but, I didn't understand that at the time. I was too naive.
Yeah.
So, and then I thought, okay, actually, I don't really believe in aid, but I can see what works. And what works is that you help entrepreneurs, that you build business, the economic wheels have to go for any country, really.
Do you still have that perspective to this day?
Yeah. Even stronger now, I think.
Yeah.
For me, it was sort of, oh, really, at that time, because I was young.
Yeah.
And now I'm a really strong believer that aid should not exist. Only for emergency aid, of course. Yeah. We need that for sure. Yeah, and then I went back and now I was into building businesses and supporting businesses, and I got a job with a UK NGO, which was about building businesses and helping business thrive. So that was a big life-changing moment for me. And then there was later on, I was one of the first to write the guidelines for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Denmark for how to do it. So we didn't call it that, but it was a CSR due diligence, ESG due diligence. We wrote the guidelines for how to assess that. And I was part of that. And I was sent a lot to China. So that was also a bit of an eye-opener. So in my experience, I've actually been there. So, I'm not an academic person that sits in my ivory tower and look and think, I think it's like this. I've actually been out in the factories in China. I've seen people, having human rights violated in Africa and in Asia. So I've sort of been there, got my hands dirty.
What were some of the feelings in those situations, if you go back and remember?
So good story. So at the time, CSR was a really weird thing. I wrote the first book that came out, and I remember being interviewed by a journalist, and she couldn't spell CSR. So okay, that was how alien it was.
CSR way before CSR was a thing.
It was. I think we were a handful of people, and I think there's only 3 of them left that's still working with CSR. So I got sent to China for a Danish company. I won't mention them, but it was a very, very strong culture, a really cool little company. And they said to me, we want to have the same culture, but also the same working conditions as we have in our factory in Funen, in our factory in China. And so there was, off I went. And then I'm going to implement this, of course.
That sounds like that sounds pretty difficult. Danish working standards in China.
Yeah, but he thought it was right. His company was really old. He wanted to have this tradition, and he didn't care that he was changing from Denmark to China. He wanted the same quality. He didn't want to compromise. It was very cool, very visionary.
That is cool.
Yeah, except so at the time in Tianjin in China, there was only migrant workers. And they arrived because they wanted to work all the time. And if they didn't get what they wanted, to just move to the next factory because there was not enough workers and a lot of factories being built. So when I came and I thought we're going to implement nice canteen and good working conditions and breaks and Sunday off and maybe build a kindergarten so the wives could come and all that. And they just walked out of the factory. So he calls me and he says, I just lost all my workers because they don't want what you're offering. They want the money and they want to be able to work 24/7.
Oh.
Okay. So that was my first sort of experience.
Unexpected.
Very much so. But he understood because, he also wanted to have better conditions. And today it's completely changed because now around Tianjin it's a real city. So it's not just a field with some factories on it. Now there are kindergartens and schools and stuff. So the families arrive. And of course then, like everybody else, they want to be with their family over the weekend. So it's changed a lot. But this was early days in Wild West China.
Yeah.
It was very different.
I wouldn't have expected them to walk out, but of course it makes sense with like the pyramid of needs. If money is the absolute need to like support family, then you just want to work as much as possible, I suppose.
And you want the money instead of the nice conditions. So they were sleeping on the floor, and we wanted to give them nice beds and mattresses, and they didn't want any of that. They want us to give them the money rather than invest in the conditions. And over time, they have, really nice factories now. And the other thing that we want them to, you can have a real sore tummy if you go to China and eat the wrong thing. And a lot of them ate, things that are not that nice to eat. Yeah. So they had really sore tummies often, which of course wasn't optimal for factory production.
No.
But they didn't want nice food. They wanted money, not nice food.
Just give me the money.
Yeah, just give me the money because they were there 100% to work. And to truth be told, I should have seen that because I lived in Africa. I knew how much money was, how important it was to them, but I didn't relate the two. I just thought they'd be really grateful, but they were not.
Wow. That must have given you some great perspective going on in your career, having seen that like firsthand, how you think you're doing good, but actually it cannot be accepted into the circumstances of the people that you're doing good for because they have other needs. Yeah,
but also understanding that it's a journey for all countries, and the development that's been going on in China is extreme. So from time to time, when I got back there, and for a couple of years, like 4 or 5 years, I went to China a lot.
Okay.
And I stayed in the same hotel, but I couldn't find my way around because of being so much built around me that I couldn't orient myself on houses. I could do it, and you can't read anything in China because it's all in Chinese. That's true. So when I walked around, I was like, what is that building? Where's my hotel? I just couldn't find my way back up sometimes because there was a new building going on from 1 month to the other. And then when you went to Tianjin, now there's a fast train, but at the time you drove with a taxi driver, and all you could do was shut your eyes because it was so dangerous and they drove like complete lunatics. So what I did was just close my eyes until I got to the factory, because there was no way I was going to watch what was going on. And it sounded a bit like an idiot putting your head in the sand, but it was.
It worked.
You got to cope how you got to cope.
That was how you coped.
I'm also curious, like I know like traveling, it can be such an eye-opening experience, and you have a lot of experience with that. Are there any things today that even today you still kind of think back to your times in Africa and China when you're just like, you know what, I'm super grateful, like, you know, when you take a hot bath or something like that, when you're just like, man, like we have it good?
I think that every day. Wow. Man, we have it good.
Yeah.
And actually on my way here, I was watching all the bikes. There's actually a bike queue going into the city, which I think is really interesting. And I've never seen such a big bike queue. And I thought, well, we live in the best country in the world. And I'm sorry if you're not from here, but it is the best country in the world. Yeah, I lived in the US too, and I didn't particularly like that. So you compare.
Yeah.
And of course, yes, we have it good, but we also need to be really empathetic with other people that don't have, they don't have the same conditions that we have.
Yeah. Very true.
And then when you've been here for a while, I've been back for a long time now, sometimes I even have to think, okay, come on, back in the helicopter, because you seem to get bogged down by small, stupid things that are completely irrelevant. And just think, oh, come on, helicopter, back and think of a larger picture.
Is there anything that kind of like pings you back into that feeling of gratitude sometimes, where it's like maybe not such a gentle nudge, but a bit of a smack sometimes inside of yourself when you just...
No, I think I am genuinely really grateful for the life I have, and I think I think more people should be grateful. I think we do a lot of bickering. There's a lot of that going on in Denmark, but it's really a sign of being extremely spoiled. Yeah. Because I don't know if you have kids, but if you have kids, like, and then you remind them, okay, you're actually really, really lucky. Yeah. And then okay, so sometimes you just have to sort of remind yourself that it's not really that important. Yeah. Whatever it is, your bicycle's flat or something. It's all right.
Yeah, it's a very small. Yeah, it's a very small problem. Yeah, we use that sentence like a couple of times where it's like, oh yeah, that's right. That's a first world problem. Yeah. It's not as hard as walking 5 kilometers for water or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody died. I normally say, okay, chill. Nobody died.
Not too many people dying of a flat bike tire.
No, exactly.
And how does your career path go from being in China and then forward?
So then I went back to Europe for a while, and then I wrote a book with my friend and at the time also partner as a consultant firm. We had Mette Reisman, and we wrote one of the first books on CSR, and we that sort of took my career quite fast into consulting, and I like consulting. So we were consulting for, I think one of our first clients was Bestseller. Which they had unfortunately she passed away, but they had a very, very cool lady who started out in Bestseller as a 15-year-old and then became their CSR.
Okay.
Tina DeVenture, yeah. And she just saw, she needed help because she wanted this and she wanted this for Bestseller, and they are doing extremely well in this field. I mean, they're very, very good at we call it CSR now because that's how we started, but it's at sort of corporate being responsible. Mm-hmm. And so that was our first client. And that was an eye-opener because it was a fashion industry. Yeah. And they get a lot of beating, and it was the right thing to do to beat them because it needed to improve. Yeah. But I think they were very, very fast at understanding the real topics. And I think literally from a helicopter, they could see that, okay, the world is, we need to... There's deforestation going on. They could see it because they were so big that they very quickly decided that they needed to have a business model that was more sustainable, and they changed that. And that's 20 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a long time ago where they started out, and then now they're very, very good at it. And then I went. I worked for Big Four for a while, and then in 2016, I was approached by a group of what we call high net worth individuals. Mm-hmm. So people who have either sold a company or inherited money. And they were women, but that I think it was because I got together and there were women, but there were. And one was sort of leading the group, and they came and said, we really want our money to work for sustainability. And so they asked if I could look at their portfolio and what I could offer, and what I thought about it and how they could invest more sustainably. And we looked through the portfolio and we made an assessment based on, okay, this company, should that be in a portfolio that you call sustainable? And then I made some recommendations, and then they said, okay, that's interesting. And one of them was a very, very cool lady who's I'm still collaborating with closely. And she said, okay, here's my asset manager, here's Anne-Louise, please make this product. And I'll be the first investor.
Interesting.
So Christian, my partner in SDG Invest, and we got together, and he was classic finance guy, dry and full of numbers and
analytical.
She said, you have to prove to the world that you do not compromise on your return when you invest sustainably. And I think we claim, I might get a beating for this, but I think we claim that we were one of the first funds to focus on sustainable investment in Europe when we launched.
Okay.
I was so alone. My job, because he's a numbers guy, so he looks a bit like the other guys on the panel. So I was sent out marketing the fund, SDG Invest, and I was so alone because they all looked at me as I was completely insane. You will lose a lot of money if you invest sustainably.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, we're here to prove. So year one was a little nerve-wracking.
I could imagine.
It's like, oh, are we going to prove it?
You had a lot to prove.
Yeah, we had lots to prove.
Yeah.
But we did it. And today, of course, investing sustainably is almost normal.
What made you in that situations keep going at it? Because you must have met a lot of
resistance,
but also skeptics, exactly, skeptics, and probably also in a very man-dominated industry where people are looking. So you come with a brand new product, you're a woman, and you're telling us how we should invest our old man money.
Yeah.
Good luck.
That's very good description. Yeah, it just sounds awful, right? So why did I go on? I think I didn't think I had a choice, really. I mean, because I've been in factories all over the world and I've worked for these big corporates, it's logic to me that you should consider these things when you invest. Mm-hmm. And I think it does not, I don't do it, I don't do it emotionally. It's just, of course, I want to invest in companies that have a very strong sustainability profile. Because I think they're the leaders of tomorrow. I think they'll have much easier to attract talent. So there's a fight for good people, and good people want to work for companies that behave well. So I think they've got a winning edge there. And then I think if they think circular economy, and if they think leadership in terms of any areas, it could be ethical AI, or if they go in front always, to me, they're bound to be a better investment. Mm-hmm. It's just, of course, we have a financial screening. Christian would murder me if I didn't mention that. So we have a financial screening. So we also have a very strong financial screening, and then we have the sustainability screening.
Which one comes first?
The financial.
The financial.
Yeah. And then, so there's a pre-screening. This is a bit boring and technical, perhaps, but there's something called SBTI, Science-Based Target Initiatives. Basically, companies that have those targets, they have set targets by scientists that aligns with the Paris Agreement. So they will reduce CO2, they will reduce emissions so that we don't get over the 1.5 degree, right? Mm-hmm. And they're not doing it themselves. So it's not like they're doing this through this initiative. So that's our first screening.
Okay.
Because we think it's super important that they have set these targets. They take it seriously. Mm-hmm. Then we have the financial screening. Then we have the sustainability screening, which is a very, very deep technical screening. And then we send them back to Christian, and he assesses whether
he pulls the numbers apart.
And then we sit together in the investment committee, and then we just decide whether we think they're good or not.
Interesting.
I'm also curious, just going slightly a little bit back to the beginning of that story too, when it's like you get approached by these high net worth individuals and they have this exciting new idea that we're going to have this investment fund, but it's going to be a sustainable one, and that you should be the one leading that as far as all the CSR part of that the corporate social responsibility, and that's who you are. That's like what you want to do with your life. Like, how did that feel to get that opportunity into like, okay, this can be something huge. This could make a big impact. How was that for you?
I'm not that person. I just go with it, which is very entrepreneurial. I don't sit there and think, can this be really big? Because it could also not be big, right? Yeah. So I didn't, but I did have a moment where my auditor, he's sitting and he's a very dry man. And he looked up from his paper. I explained the business model and I explained what we were doing and what we're aiming at and whatever. And he looks up and he goes, if this works, this can be very big. It's like, yay!
and that was like a 10 out of 10 excitement for him.
It was, he was super excited. But so that was interesting. We didn't do it because it had to be big. We wanted to be big, but we did it because we wanted to prove to the world that you do not compromise on your return when you invest sustainably. And we did it because the woman I mentioned earlier, she wanted it to be a global movement. So she wanted, which is also why we're listed on NASDAQ. You can buy it, it's not very expensive, because we wanted everybody to have the opportunity. Because even though she is a very wealthy person, she could see that gave her a special opportunity, and she would like to pass that on to other people so that everybody can afford to make sustainable investments. And of course, if everybody does it, the world will be a better place.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, she is pretty cool. It was a very strong vision she had there. And I think Christian and I were just soldiers, we carry out stuff. But we, for a long time, war stories. So I was at Folkemøde, people's meeting in Bornholm. All the audiences, they're my kind of people, right? So they like this theme, they like sustainability. But on the panel, that was not my kind of people. So I was sitting, and there were maybe 5 from all the big banks, 5 of the top CEOs, and
probably all men.
All men, not one woman. So they put me on, hashtag all male panel, and then they had, and then the moderator, of course, was a woman, journalist, and to be fair, I didn't have media training. I wasn't, and they were so good at this, and they were, they aced it, but the journalist was always very kind to me because they could have murdered me. Because I was, they were so technically good at doing these panel talks, and I was just new and really enthusiastic. But the journalist always
answers and everything like that.
Yeah, they ask, what do you call this? Klyngebomme, the bombs that would you invest in them? And then this guy from one of the big pension funds, he said, we don't invest in that. And then one guy in the audience says, yes, you do. It says here that you do this. And he could just smooth, I would have gone, I've been so scared. But he was so good at just doing that. But the journalist always helped me. So I never really felt that I was in trouble because they would always nudge so that I was being helped, which was really nice of them. Yeah. But I also think that it was an agenda that was difficult because they had all the right arguments for why, if you invest in oil, fossils, you'd get a higher return, and would go like, but we have 0 tolerance for investing in fossils. So for us, it's not interesting, and our investors know that. So they're happy that they don't get the oil price going up and then, their investment go up, because they don't want to be in fossils. Yeah. So that argument was, took a long time to say. But I think today we almost have 1 billion Danish kroner in our fund. So I think we proved that I think we have about 2,500-3,000 investors.
Okay. So, yeah. Wow. So it is moving in the right direction.
We're no longer a startup. Yeah. we are getting to be a little bigger.
That's quite a significant accomplishment.
Yeah, well, it doesn't feel like it. I always think we should do more. We can do better. We should do more. We should raise the bar. And then, of course, when we started, there was no compliance and there was no And now with EU, SFDR, there's a lot of compliance going on, which suits me fine because I like to prove that we're doing the right thing. And if you do what you're told to do, then, you get a good stamp from the financial authorities. So we are an Article 9 fund, which means it's the most dark green type thing investment-wise. And it means that we incorporate SDGs and sustainability in the investment strategy. And we do. So it suits me fine.
And then you go on to becoming a partner in Vaar Ventures as well.
Yeah. Same crowd, though.
Yeah, same crowd. How have that transition been for you?
So what happens naturally is that we have SDG Invest. It's growing. It's doing nicely. And we're happy with it. And we're twisting and turning and trying to improve. But you also realize that what are the future companies we're going to invest in? And you always want new and better companies to invest in. So, and then, of course, people think that the billion is mine personal money, which it is not. So what happens is that you get a lot of really good cases. People know you're investing, and but they can't. The asset class thing doesn't really wash with everybody. So we got a lot of really cool pitches. And then I started to think, okay, what to do with these really cool pitches? And we started to do some investments as angels, as you call it, where you just make sure smaller tickets. And then we just and to me that, even though it doesn't sound like I'm that structured, I actually quite like structure. So it wasn't structured enough for me. I didn't see the cases. There were too much lottery tickets because you get in, maybe you put 50,000, 200,000 krona in, and you don't know, you don't feel, you can't follow. So I didn't like that. So we thought, okay, if we are a lot of angels that pull together, we can make larger tickets, get a more interesting seat, get a seat at the table, get a seat at the board, and then and follow the investment. We can look at the company much closer, and they'll be a little bit further, and it's not just an idea and all that. So we got together with Mette, my partner in Vår, and she's an operational partner, and then there's a more silent partner who's also the partner in SDG Invest. And we started to invest in, and we had done it before, so we actually had two or three investments outside Vår Ventures, but it became very natural to us to sort of structure it.
You've heard a lot of pitches then, and for our audience, maybe they're already fundraising, maybe they're going into a fundraise. What's the most memorable pitch that you remember, and what was it that made it stand out?
Is it one that I invested or not?
Could be both. Let's just hear both.
There are a couple of approaches, right? So one of the investments we have is in something called Quassia Technologies. And I was on my bike in the city next to this big building with lots of color where the cinema sign, I can't remember the name. And I was bicycling there. It was a sunny day 2 years ago, and the phone rings, and it's a number I don't know. So I normally pick it up, and it's like Anders, and he starts talking to me about his case on my bike, and I'm like, okay. But there was something in his pitch, and it's like an elevator pitch. It was something in that where I don't know, I just loved the way he talked, and said he was so...
And this was on a phone call?
It was on a phone call.
And you're on the bike? Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. So I said to him, okay, listen, send me something, which I normally say, send me something. And he's like, well, we could also come by. I'm like, yeah, you could. There's something in there. The connection is good.
Yeah.
He arrived and his partner, Joachim, and they came into the office, and they had this oral that essentially we invested in them. And the team was just so weird, because one is, but good in a good way, because Anders is very firm, and he looks like someone out of finance. His hair is sleek, and he's very strict. And the other one is a little bit more messy, but he's very, very entrepreneurial. And Joachim obviously is originally from DTU, and the two of them make a really good team. So when they left, we were sitting in the room, and one woman that used to work for me, she said, did we just see green fuel? And I'm like, yeah. So if that works, that could be really big. And I'm like, yeah, And then we actually sort of, when we like to do that, we say we sing and dance, or we kiss and dance for a while, and we did that for a while.
How long was that process?
Yeah, it's an interesting process because they actually went with someone else, and that fell through, and then they came back, and we were so keen, so we said yes, of course we'd invest, and we loved the team. We still love this investment; it's a really cool investment, and it was maybe over 8 months.
Okay.
Before we actually signed the deal, and that's about 2 years ago since we met.
That's really cool. And I've always been curious about this with investors, because Mikkel and I, we've done a lot of pitching ourselves in our own company and things like that. And it can be quite a long process from initial meeting to the actual investment. And, you were saying kiss and dance, and it is kind of like this dating period of like, do we want to get married here with our companies, or what's the deal, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious for you individually, because I'm sure it's different for everyone, but I'm sure you get some sort of intuition or gut feeling earlier on from 8 months. Like how at what point do you normally kind of know, like, I'm pretty certain we're going to do a deal here, but now you have to go through the formalities of the due diligence and things like that. But how soon does that gut feeling kick in for you?
So luckily we are more than one investor. So we share the ideas and we talk them through. And I don't think our process is normal. To be fair, I think there are processes like ours, but I think we do take a long time. We like to follow them. We look and we talk and we have coffee and I know that in our industry, in venture, there are a lot of people like, okay, we'll do the deal now and fear of missing out, and we'll do it on Friday. And whenever I get a pitch, well, we need to close by May, and I'm like, okay, sorry, find someone else. We're not interested. It's my own money. I'm not interested in investing in people who want speed. Why didn't they come 6 months earlier when they knew they had and they were running out of money in May? So we like to do a very thorough due diligence, but even song and dance for a while, and I think it's done us good. We do have a gut feeling from day one, so I don't want to listen to my gut feeling. So I want the data, I want the story behind it to be true, and then I have gut feeling. And I think it's a very human thing. And I must also say, if there's a criticism of what we do, is that we tend to, our founder couples are quite similar. They wouldn't say they're similar, but there's a little bit of a formula there, and that wasn't intentional. But when I look back and saw what we invested in, I could see that except for one, it's very much we're attracted to a certain sort of founder team and personality.
What does that look like, that founder team?
We like engineers. I know it's been very controversial to say out of DTU, but I love DTU. I love engineers, and I think Denmark is very, very good at creating engineers that are innovative.
Yeah.
So, and creative. Whereas I don't know if you get someone's going to murder me now, but a German engineer, you can see how that would be. But at DTU, I think they're also good at bringing out creativity and at thinking outside the box, and they're very, very good at fostering people who are entrepreneurs, I think. Mm-hmm. So we like that, and we also like people who are good at seeing a spot in the market that needs change. So we're an impact fund. So of course, everything we invest in has to change the world or has to have positive impact on the planet or people. So they have to have that mindset, which means it gives them a little bit of a different personality, because it's not just money.
Yeah.
But I was at an event with Jesper Buch recently, and I had an eye-opening moment, because he is an extremely successful investor, and he does not look at what I look at all. And I'm like, I would never have invested in X, Y, Z. And he's like, no, but they're very, very successful. So I think that's a big difference in how you approach it. And I think as a company, if you're a startup, it's important to look at that. So It's important to see, okay, who will love my idea and then not spend time with me if the appeal is not there, because you can waste so much time, and there's so many people out there just not interested or not investing or talking, but not actually put the money on the table when things come.
When you say that, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see founders doing their fundraising? You mentioned just what you said there, and there was also that your guys' process is typically longer than normal VCs. What are some of the mistakes that you've seen where you've turned someone down, but that you see goes over and over again?
And I said that at the panel the other day as well. I'd like to, in our case, we'd like to see how you're going to change the world. So tell me the spot you're hitting where there's a need for change. And at the same time, tell me how we're going to make a good investment. So it's not, not too much of the sort of more soft stuff, but also some of the numbers. So the other day I got an email and it said, AI, EdTech, 1.2 million euro in the title. Mm-hmm. And I actually just thought, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I know what I'm going to open up and look at now. EdTech, AI, and 1.2 million. So
was that the round that they were raising, 2.1 million?
Yeah. So just by landing, I was interested because I saw this, and then I looked into it. And a lot of people are actually not that good at talking about their own idea because they are so into it. So it just makes sure you have a selling person with you, someone who's able to talk about this really, really good idea. And then, of course, we have those that get quite angry with you when you turn them down.
Yeah.
And they just go on a blacklist. It's like, oh, never again.
Yeah.
So, and some people do that. They get really offended.
Is that something that you see now that you talked about DTU? And for people who doesn't know, that's like the technical university in Denmark. Do you see a pattern in technical founders where they are only technical coming to you and pitching you, that the pitch is like maybe a little too technical and product focused? Versus you talked about Quasia, that they came with like a nerdy guy and a sales guy. Do you see dynamics there where you can see that there's one thing that works a little better than the other?
No, because I think it's sometimes the sales guy is the nerdy guy. So, I don't mind. But I like is that they're a team and they complement each other. And they're super ambitious and extremely smart. And I don't mind if they are male or female, but often they are male. Yeah. And I'd love to see more female pitches. But that particular role, we're also in Heim, and Heim is very similar in the setup, or in the mindset, which we like. So we're happy. We go for those, and it's quite obvious because we always agree. Yeah. So when we had with Heim, we didn't make it in the first round. We were just simply too late. It was closed. It took a day or two, and the round was closed. So we got really annoyed with that because we really wanted that investment, and we knew the team, and we liked them a lot. And then there was an opening later on, and we just went for it. And there we didn't. We've known them for a long time, and we just wanted in so badly. So we were really happy to get the chance to get in.
So when you've had a process that's long and you are like, we know now, then when the opportunity comes, then you're fast.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting.
The minute Mette and I agree.
Yeah.
And that is perhaps the most difficult part, but it's a good thing because it means that we complement each other. The minute we agree, we're up for it.
There was just one thing that I was thinking about that I wanted to ask you about. Do you only invest in teams or also single founders? Because sometimes we hear the thing about, but if that one founder, he dies, then the whole business is gone. And that's kind of sometimes the rule of thumb. Is that something that you guys also has as a kind of a gateway?
No, definitely not. No, and we've been very, very close to making investments in one person. Of course, nobody counts on if this person dies. I mean, God knows, but it's very rare that it happens, right?
Exactly.
So I wouldn't be worried about that. And I think the idea he would probably have a team around him, and we are a little bit later, so he would have a team around him, or she would. But no, that wouldn't make a difference. No. And we have an investment that I'm following at the moment, and they look like that we didn't make that investment. We were very, very close, and for some reason we didn't. There was something that nerved me a bit, so we didn't make the investment. But I'm following the guy now, and he looks really successful. So I'm a little bit annoyed. But he was a very good founder.
On that nerve, was it your gut, or was it the data and the logic?
It was both.
Okay.
Yeah, it was both. And it was Mette and I in agreement that she was more the data and mine was the gut feeling. And I just I'm getting a vibe, and if we get a vibe, then we listen to it because you should listen to it. But you should back it by data, right?
Yeah.
You can't always.
No.
It's not that easy.
You said something interesting just a minute ago that I just want to go back to real quick because it is becoming a greater and greater subject talked about today, which is that the most pitches that you see are men doing the pitches. And you do see, of course, some women, but you would like to see some more. Why do you think that is, that there's so many fewer female entrepreneurs out there pitching VCs like yourself today? And what can be done to encourage more of equality there?
If I could solve that, I would really, then I'm ready. Then I go straight to heaven. but it's true. It's a huge problem. It's also an enormous loss because there are some very, very good female founders, and we talked about the female founders earlier that have invented good stuff. And I think we don't get the pitch. Now, recently there was an article which really made it worse that said that if women invest in women, the chances of raising a Series A is less than if they had taken a male investor, because people don't think that women know how to invest, so therefore they discount the fact that they have. Yeah, so it even made it worse, but it's already bad. So I think a lot of people are doing a very good job to get more female entrepreneurs. But nevertheless, I don't know the numbers, maybe you do. Is it 0.1% of funding that goes to female founders? I mean, it's so little. It's less than 1%. And I think we get pitches from female founders, and we would love to invest. We've been following a couple of them, but there are not a lot of pitches. So we love to see mixed teams. At least we can drive it through that. Mm-hmm. We also talk, and the other day I was in a board meeting and I said, we need to have female representation on the board. In this case, I'm just an observer, so I don't count. And I said, we don't discard it. And they were really proud because they had 35% in an engineer company. It's not Kvasir, but another one. And they were really proud because they had 35% women in management level and employee level. But we have to drive the agenda all the time.
Yeah.
And it's a super important point. And if I could fix it, I would. Yeah. but there are some smart people out there trying to. I think Christian Vindergaard from the Fund for Entrepreneurship is really trying hard. I think Innovation Fund is doing a great job. So in Denmark, we're trying, but we are so behind.
Yeah. What do you think is one or two or a couple of things that have set you apart from the norm throughout your journey as an entrepreneur, becoming an investor, making VC funds, like going the whole distance as well? And when we ask you about it, you're like, yeah, well, I just go with the flow, and I it's almost like it hasn't bothered you, or I don't know what, but
yeah, it's a difficult question. I think that I'm not scared. And I think you cannot be an entrepreneur and be scared. And if I was aware of the risk, I would probably not do it, right? So, and I think this is common. This is a lot of books about entrepreneurship. They say that, don't be scared, just do it. I also have a tendency to feel I never arrived. So I don't ever get tired. I asked my mentor once, I said, did you, now that you're a chairman of this and that and the other, do you feel you have arrived? And where does it stop? And he says, never stops. If you're that type of person, it never stops. So I don't think that I will ever stop. I'll just come up with something else that I'll try. And if you ask my mother, I was screaming a lot as a baby, and she said it was because I wanted to speak French. So I just was always trying to aim for something really difficult that I couldn't achieve. And somehow it never dawned on me that I couldn't fly, and then so I flew. And you have to have that in you, because if you're really scared or you are aware of the risk, but then you shouldn't do it. You end up a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
How can one cultivate that? Like, where do you pull your courage from, and how can other young people cultivate that?
Maybe because I lived in a civil war and because I had all these experiences, I'm very, very aware of life. So I'm extremely aware that we will die, and it's not forever. And actually, I'm over 50, so it's going downhill from now. So what do you want to achieve with your life? and then go for it. Because nothing worse than sort of unfulfilled potential. And I think it's much, much stronger to have failed or to have upset someone, to have been there, lived and been a part of something than just going with the flow. But I also realized that a lot of people don't want to go with the flow. I think what we should do in Denmark, which you're extremely good at in the US, is encourage. It's okay to fail. You can always have a day job if it goes wrong, and then keep pushing that. It's okay to fail. It's okay to fail because we're so scared of losing face. And the thing is, a lot of entrepreneurs, they have failed, but they don't talk about their failures. They talk about all the good things they achieved and not how. I mean, the other day we have the investments, and I was chatting to one of our CEOs, and he was a little bit upset because things were a little difficult. And I said, well, it's a sign that you're successful. Because if you're not successful, nobody cares. But the minute it smells of success, people will hate you. They will sue you. They will find a million excuses to get a piece of the cake one way or another. And it's basically because it smells a little bit of success and they want part of it and they don't know how to create it themselves. And it's very, very hard work. But if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like hard work.
Yeah.
So, I worked my butt off, but I don't feel I work my butt off.
Yeah, it feels like you're playing.
Yeah, I love my work. I love what I do. I love the team I have. I love the people I work with. And we want to achieve something. And it's much more important than going into the nitty-gritty of whatever lawyer letter you can receive. Yeah.
When you said that, there was just one thing that me and Travis's coach, he said to us one time is, who do you think loses the most in the world? Winners. They lose all the time, but they just keep going.
Yeah.
And it's the same with entrepreneurs. And that's one thing when we've been in the States that I really love is you never look down on someone who failed 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times. But here in Denmark, if you go bankrupt, that's like you take on a shame society-wise because you're like, you can't figure out business. But we just don't have a system that cultivates in like entrepreneurship in the same way as in the States, where it's like, well, just because you failed at this, it doesn't mean that you can't continue pursuing your dream. And I think that's one thing that we could really learn in Denmark is keep going.
Absolutely right, what you're meant to say. But I think we don't, when you are successful, people start to dislike you, whereas in the US, when people are successful, people start to love them. Yeah. So, and they really put, I can do what you do mindset on, whereas in Denmark, it's like, oh, and so it's really, so a lot of people that are successful hide. And particularly women, because they get a beating. If they don't get a beating from the press, they get a beating from so a lot of women, successful women, are scared of standing and going to be a role model for other female founders, etc. And I think that's really sad. We should really. It's the same with politicians. I mean, look at our previous prime minister, Helle Thorning-Schmidt. She just gets more and more beating, and she's like, well, actually, she was really cool. She was the first female prime minister. There's a lot of first on her. And we're just so good in Denmark at hitting each other in the head rather than building people. Yeah. So what often happens is that within your own little world, you build people, and you build your friends, and you build your colleagues, whatever, but you don't stick your nose out. And that's sad.
Yeah, that is. And it reminds me too of another quote or saying that I've heard before, what you were talking about before, about like with people, they don't want to take the risk of failing, so they'll take a job instead. Whereas like the risk of failing in entrepreneurship is you take a job. Like, so they just jump to the worst case, or like the worst case, if it's something they really want, of course, because it isn't for everyone, as you've said multiple times. But it's just kind of funny for those who do want it. They're like, but if I failed, then I have to get a job. So I'll just get a job.
Yeah.
And the logic doesn't line up all the way there.
No, and I think a corporate career and an entrepreneur career, if we can call it that, they're two different things. And I couldn't have survived for 1 second in a corporate. And I know that. I found out really, really quick, really young, this is never going to beat me. And But there are a lot of people that are extremely good at that. And I have so much respect for that. I actually think that's much more difficult. Having a corporate career, navigating in how to get to the top is much more difficult than being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because there you do what you don't have to navigate. You just have to, of course you do, but you know what I mean? You don't have to take other people into account. How am I going to get to the top?
Less politics.
Less navigating, let's sort of
all the red tape,
backstabbing stuff, which this is how I envisage it. I have no idea if it's like that because I've never tried it. But I think it's
the TV shows at least say that.
Yeah, exactly. If you watch the TV show, then you definitely see some backstabbing. So to me that, as long as you try and fulfill your potential, I think that's the best thing you can do as a human being is fulfill your potential.
Definitely. I want to try and jump back to your bicycle ride and the CEO calling you, because we hear a lot about how important it is when you pitch your startup to build the story around your pitch instead of just purely data. Can you take us back to that moment and how much did storytelling actually play a role in his conversation with you?
So it was his co-founder, it was not the CEO. But when they arrived, they were very much storytellers, and they were extremely good at communicating. So their way of talking to you, it was just working. I understand you're nervous if you go for a pitch. You should be nervous. It's really important what you're doing. So be a little nervous, but also be charming and be yourself. I will try and find out who yourself is anyway. I'll try and dig and find out. And I'll Google you, and I'll Google your holding company, and I'll Google your wife's holding company, and I'll go. I will actually
hunt them down.
Every stone. I'll look at your Facebook profile. So we will do everything we can to find out what is this person really like. And so be yourself, because we'll find out anyway.
Yeah.
And yes, you can run into psychopaths, but it doesn't happen very often, luckily. And most founders have, they have their heart at the right place, particularly when they come to us.
Do you use LinkedIn as kind of one of those where you can kind of look at their values, look what are they posting, or how you say turn every stone? You said Facebook now, but what are some of the key indicators that you look for that you know that you can kind of turn the stones on?
There's been a lot of stories out there about founders who've invented their CVs and stuff, and I have no idea how that can happen, because you will find out. You can see it. I don't know. Have you looked at LinkedIn from one top to if you looked at 2,000 profiles, and I probably looked at 20,000 profiles, there's a picture, and you can very quickly see whether this is true. And one of the reasons to be fair that we don't make investments very far away is because we don't know the culture as well. And I'm much more comfortable in shopping in my own backyard. And in the beginning I thought, but no, we're going to make investments in faraway countries. And I just realized that it's too insecure for me. Yeah. I'd like to feel you, look you in the eye and see if you. We've been talking now for about an hour, and you get a feeling of the people behind.
Yeah.
If you know people, then you'll find out what they're like.
I saw someone writing on LinkedIn, and that really hit me. He said fundraising. You can summarize fundraising coming down to one thing, and it's trust. Does this investor trust that you can do what you're saying you're going to do? And do I trust you as a person? How does that resonate with you?
It's nice with smart people. It's true, completely true. And the same goes when you fundraise for investments. So when we fundraise for investors, it's the same thing. It's trust. Trust. Do they deliver? Do they, uphold their promises? Do they know what they're talking about? It's actually trust. And so the person was absolutely right. It's all about trust.
And for someone starting out in entrepreneurship or are already fundraising and doesn't maybe have all the luck with them right now, how would you build trust, or how do you build trust with investors?
You be yourself. Be honest. Mm-hmm. And sometimes one
Just
guy...
like authenticity.
Yeah. Be authentic and be yourself. I think it's really important. And I think that also you come across a lot stronger. But to be honest, the people we have been looking at, they are young, they're promising, they're smart. they are themselves. They know they're smart. They were smart in kindergarten, so they were smart all the way in. They have something they want to prove to the world, and we'd like to support that. I very rarely see someone who's not themselves.
Yeah.
And if I do, I don't see them very long.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if this authenticity and some of these other values, if that's sort of the green light here, what are some of the red flags? Have you ever had some pitches or some meetings where there are some red flags where you're just like, nope, I can already tell right now, like, or things that people do and they think it's going to be impressive or something, but you're just like, nah, that's not going to work here.
Yeah, I'm thinking of one guy.
Let me get out my...
There's one thing that comes to mind right now.
Yeah, there was a guy, it was a really good pitch deck.
Yeah.
So I was really intrigued, and I said, set up the meeting. So you set up this pre-screening meeting, and and it was on Teams because one guy was in Miami, I think, somewhere. And when the team opens up and you can hear him talk, and he's a bit of an idiot. so I could hear him like, and I'm thinking, oh my God. So he doesn't know I'm on Teams already. So we turn on, and he's leaning back, and he's in a hoodie, and he's just so arrogant. And he clearly thinks that he is Elon Musk or something. I mean, he is so full of himself. Now, that doesn't work. But then I started to stalk him. And his co-founder was an Indian engineer. And so the idea was really good. So he had sort of seen, I'm going to be the co-founder of this. He clearly had nothing to do with inventing it. But he thought, I'll be Elon Musk driving this. And he was so arrogant to his Indian co-founder, and he was so arrogant to me. And he went, send me a check, basically. Show me the money. Yeah. And I kept being on the call because I was so fascinated that he was a complete psychopath. But he didn't know that the teams were on, and he was like, "Can you close the door, please?" So he was bitching at someone. Yeah. And just thought, oh my God. So I have come across some that are completely off.
Yeah.
And I have also come across some that they were not mature enough, so they didn't have eye contact, or they were too young, or they were. But I follow them for a while, because when they grow up, they become more and more self-secure, and so then they may be interesting later.
Okay, so you actually have a couple of prospects right now that you're like
got the finger on the pulse.
Anne-Louise, she's looking at you right now.
Yeah, we have about 10 on our watch list, as we call it, where we just follow them and see where they go.
I'm curious how it plays in when you talk about having a good pitch deck, a good pitch. You have someone who's confident, knows what they're talking about, they're authentic, and they're displaying these qualities to you. Good communication are some of these things that have sort of repeatedly come up, and it makes total sense logically as well. Does the reason sort of revolve back to, if they can be this authentic and communicate this good with me, then I know they can also do it with their customers. I know they can do it with their suppliers. I know they can do it with whoever they come in contact with. And that's what gives me confidence that they'll actually make this business work, because that translates out to everything else. Or is it something that has to do with like the connection with you, or a little bit of all of it? Or how does that translate into like, okay, this is a good investment?
Yeah, no, I think you said it yourself. I mean, so that if they're good at communicating, they are self-secure. If they feel confident, then they will be confident in other areas. And when they meet, when they have a bad day, they'll still keep going because they are mature in their head. So I think a lot of the investments we make, they get some serious beatings sometimes for all sorts of reasons, and they just keep going because they're mature, not because they get angry or what drives them is that they know that this is a good idea and I will carry this out, rather than I'm going to prove to the world that I can do it. But I also know that a lot of entrepreneurs. And I had this conversation with this other successful investor that I mentioned earlier, and he said he wants people who are under, they were not number one in school, they were number, and then they want to prove to the world. And I would never invest in a person like that, but there are investors that do. Mm-hmm. So it's good. So it's just very important that if you pitch to me, you are mature, you have thought it through, and then you get a bigger chance at least. Mm. And of course, I have my partner Mette, and she will tear the data apart.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think there's of course, as you said earlier, also there's investors for everyone and everyone's appetite. But it's interesting to see how it looks like from my point of view that your investment thesis evolves around a more kind of complete entrepreneur in their approach. You talked about maturing, right? And now we're talking about another investor who spots many trends in people that they could have been bullied, they could have been something like that, that gives these entrepreneurs an extreme driving force. But as we also learn, maturing as people is sometimes your driving force, if something gets pulled in your life, it could be anything personally, suddenly that's removed because now you have a personal crisis, because what you poured all your drive into and you had this, I'm gonna prove it to everyone, suddenly you find out, oh, now that small child that was hurt, I done some therapy or work with a mentor, now that's gone, what's gonna motivate me? And that's just super interesting to see your perspective on that, because I get a sense that you're kind of looking for people who maybe are on the other side of that, or haven't had that drive, but they have had a drive on making the world a better place, coming from an engineering background where there is more product focus or a need. It's not so much a personal sense to prove to someone else, but it's more like, let me help the world.
Yeah. And they're not all engineers. We have a very good investment in Reduced, and they're not engineers.
Okay.
But I think Emil, the founder and co-founder, is a lawyer. But he is. But they are the same. So they are very smart. They are driven by logic. They're very strong. They're wearing Teflon. They know that they'll have a tough time, and they're confident, and they have enormous amount of ambition. And I think that's probably the key characteristics for all our founders, is that they are very ambitious and smart. But I have to say, it's not all smart, very ambitious people that succeed.
Nope.
And there are some people that are, I wouldn't say not that smart, but not maybe the top of their class, that actually average, that have a lot more success. So it doesn't go hand in hand. It just makes me happy, because that's what I buy into.
Yeah.
But I'm not. But and I always think, okay, is this person able to lead Danfoss or Lego? Or can this person can he go that far, or she? Can she or he go so far? And that's also important, because even though founder syndrome is very, very common, and they very often cannot go that far, at least they have to have the vision. So they have to see, I'm building a company with the organization, and it's a big, big company in a couple of years' time. That's where I'd like to invest. I think it's my winning recipe, but there are other winning recipes.
Yeah.
And I really acknowledge that. And when I meet them in conferences and stuff, I have, full of, I'm so impressed that, did you really invest in them? Yeah. Did you dare that? One story is, Too Good To Go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we first started doing this, the 5 guys that founded Too Good To Go, they came and pitched to us. And they had 2 pitches, and one of them was a heel. One of the guys were not that tall, and he had a heel in his shoe that made him taller. So that was one of the pitches, and the other one was Too Good To Go.
Okay.
And he was, and then they came and they pitched, and they were so charming, and it was an incredible idea. I think we all agree, but I mean, none of them are there anymore.
Yeah.
There's not one founder left in the company. So we didn't invest. I did regret that, but we and I still have the pitch. I still have the first pitch for those 5 guys on, and they were so charming. So normally they would have worked for me, but they just took a different turn, and it's a very successful company today.
That's interesting.
Well, to take it in perhaps like a slightly different direction, you've also had some exits behind you yourself in your entrepreneurial journey. And I was just curious, when you were preparing for some of these exits, for example, in the Little People company or others, what were some things that you had to do sort of towards the, if we call it like the end of that entrepreneurial journey, where you're getting ready to sell this the baby of yours that you've helped to grow up and everything like that? Like, what is that process like?
Yeah, that's a good. So I think, and I said that some time ago. I said, well, actually, sometimes your idea is good and everything is good, but you're too early, and therefore you won't succeed. And sometimes we watched a company and they pivot and they change and then they last and then it succeeds, but it's not the original idea. Little People Company was a really, really good idea. It was children's furniture built. They were shrunk, so we had said it was grown-up furniture, and then we shrunk them. They were super cute. We had a lot of interest, and we had smart shops in New York buying, and it was all based on fair trade principles, and you could eat the chair if you wanted to. It was all good, but it was in 2007, so it was too early. And then the financial crisis came, and I had an investor, and I had a really, really cool advisor, my lawyer, who was a very cool guy, my advisor. And we just said, what are we going to do? And we said, we're going to put it on hold. We're going to have the website still, but we're going to put the company on hold. And we had an enormous warehouse, but we found out a solution for that. And then we just said, okay, let's just stop for now. And then we said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to sell big chunks of furniture instead of one furniture. And we did that. So with my investor and my advisor, we helped put this company together. So we completely, we exited and we made money, but we did not make a lot of money. And I think a lot of stories, though people say they exit, they actually didn't make a lot of money. And it's just fair, because it's also good not to lose money. We didn't lose money.
Yeah.
But the fact that we had this enormous exit, I've never put anywhere this enormous exit, because it wasn't. But I think a lot of people, they say exit and they may made $1 million or $2 million. And that's also an exit. It's, by the way, also difficult. And it's a lot more difficult to handle a crisis and, what are you going to do with the warehousing and how are you going to sell these big chunks? And some of the big chunks were sold to very big chains. Yeah. So it was a good deal, but it was a very difficult position. And then he continued, the investor continued for a while, and I sort of helped for a while, and then we phased it out, which was a good decision. But it wasn't painful because we were happy. But it was not a big exit. And then I did, which was more difficult and more difficult emotionally. But I sold off the consultancy part of our company in October to EY. And one of the reasons I did that is within the field of sustainability, there's a lot happening. There's a lot happening legally and compliance-wise, etc. There's lots of law coming from the EU. And I could see that the field that I was in, which had been super successful for many years, I don't know how many Gazelle prizes I've had, but what I could see was that this field will be taken over by the Big Four. It's becoming an audit, it's becoming a compliance issue, and there's no room for individual performance anymore. There's room for leadership, and you can advise people on leadership, but that's not really.
That's not you.
Well, it's not going to make you a lot of money,
no.
Basically. So I had a chat with the managing partner of EY, and he could see what I was saying, and then he said, "Okay, let me take off your consultancy firm because I really need these people, and they're experts and they're very, very competent." And so he, increased his team with some super cool experts, and they got into a world where they could grow a lot more and a lot faster. And it was a win-win, and I made money. And that was a real exit. So that was nice. But it was much nicer than the first one. It was a happy ending for everybody.
Yeah.
Also for the people who went to EY.
It's nice you say it was a happy ending for everyone, because I was also, I've always been curious, because we have a company together, and we think about sometimes, if we can make an exit someday and things like that. But the thought, which is an exciting thought, but it's also like, but then it's over. And of course, then you have to look towards the next thing and everything like that. So I feel like there would be mixed emotions. Did you have mixed emotions with it? Like, what was that? What is that like as a founder to go through that process? What did that feel like?
No, but I think it's more the worry for the people that went to EY that they were happy because they had been, some of them with me since day one, since 2017, and they were close to me and they mattered a lot. So that was mixed. But I could also see that they would be able to fulfill their potential a lot more in the new environment than they could with me. And I think because they were super smart and very, very competent, so I think that they would just flourish there. And I think because of the way the industry was going, they could not flourish in a small consultancy boutique. But I was worried and I was sad and a little bit lonely because they all left and there I was. And then we have some people working in SDG Invest and Vår Ventures, and I love them too. But it was it felt a little bit like the right arm got torn off for a while.
You've been in the trenches with those people and fighting, right?
Yeah, and some of them were so kind, and well, all of them were so kind, but we had some war stories and been driving up and down Jutland and but they're still close to me and I still follow that they are happy.
That's really cool. If we talk about those war stories, what's one of the biggest failures that you had, like war stories where you had to like solve a problem? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think I can talk about it, and if I'm a little sort of vague in putting words on, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, sure.
But when we launched Vår, to those who remember that, we were more people in Vår, and quite quickly it just didn't work out. And the original founders of Vår was Camilla, Mette, and I were still in Vår. So it was a little bit of a nasty battle, and I was in the front. So I was leading the general ride there, and because I was the managing partner, so it was me who was in the. The other wasn't. They were in the trenches with me, but I was in the front, being shot at, and I think that is. It is nasty and it's not nice. And to me, it's a failure that you set something up that doesn't work and that you have to redo it. And it was, as things often, it actually ends up being a good thing because actually it turned out, well, that was a good thing. But while you're in it, it feels like failure.
Yeah.
That you didn't make that work. And I think for now, I mean, we love what we do now, and we have really, really good collaborations with partners I have now. But it was a time that you stopped focusing on what was important, was fundraising for the fund, and you focused on all this noise and just speaking of, the people dying. So, and we are fighting a whole bunch of white rich people. I mean, it just really makes no sense, right? Yeah. So, and it just doesn't what we set out to do, which was investing in things that could change the world. It was just a waste of time.
How did you go through that? Like, what was some of the, like, talking to your spouse at home? Like, what kind of mechanisms do you like pull in when you go to war?
Even though I was the face of the war, my two partners were amazing, and they were always behind me, and they never doubted what we were doing. They were also part of it, of course, but it was me who was taking the beating. Yeah. And they were so supportive. I mean, I never ever felt that they were sitting on the fence or getting insecure or whatever. They were always behind me. And I have an amazing spouse. But I mean, there were tears, of course there were tears. Yeah. But and another good lesson for any entrepreneur is the person with the best lawyer wins. Even if but that's just it. Get the best lawyer. It's very, very expensive not to have the best lawyer. So that's, and same goes with auditor, actually.
That's like sad but true, huh?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I spoke to my dad-in-law about it yesterday, and we agreed. And he's been a big businessman, and he said, yeah, you're right. The one with the best lawyer wins. It's just a fact. And so, but my spouse is amazing, and he always believes in me.
That's a good thing for people listening as well, is if you really have a great partner at home, you can go through some really rough battles and come home and get stitched back together and go the next day.
Yeah, and then you have to know what matters, right? So, I mean, what matters? Yeah. What matters is your family, your spouse, people around you that have a good energy, that gives you energy, and then get rid of all the stuff that wants to suck your energy or kill you or whatever, and get rid of those people, and then focus on the things that are important. So what I did, I mean, there was a point where my lawyer said, "How do you sleep at night?" And I said, "Yeah, no, I sleep all right," because it cannot take you up. It cannot. You just have to move on. And then, as I said to the CEO the other day, when people start fighting like that, it's because you're onto a good thing.
Yeah. But that is one thing that I know that I've struggled with personally in my entrepreneurial journey is separating the startup from Travis the human over here, right? Because it feels like it's almost one thing.
But it is one thing.
Yeah. And trying to separate that a little bit where it's like, if the company goes away, like I don't go away. Like I still have all those good things. I have my family, I have my friends, I have my good life. I just need a new job or a new startup or whatever it should be, right?
Yeah.
But for a while, I kind of had those tied together. So as you know, in the entrepreneurial journey, it goes like this. It is a roller coaster if there ever is one. And if you're attached onto that the whole way when you're at home too, then that's not good for a sustainable life.
No, but you have to be able to wear Teflon if you're a startup.
Oh, yeah.
Because you will get some ups and downs. And it feels good when you're out on the other side and when things are okay. There's still lots of hiccups, of course. But when it's no longer a startup, but it's actually now a business or a fund or whatever it is you're raising, it does feel amazing. And I think that you have so much more impact on your own life if you succeed. So the feeling of accomplishment is just a really, really good feeling. And I think we should acknowledge that. I think we should, and it doesn't have to be a unicorn. It doesn't have to be a unicorn. It can be that you achieve what you set out to do. And I think we should really focus on that a lot more in entrepreneurship. And then recognize that everybody's on a journey.
Yeah. For sure. You just talked about that with your lawyer asking you for sleep. That's something that we see with other founders if they go into a struggle, and especially fundraising is an extremely hard thing. Also when you're raising a fund, because you're getting a lot of no's, but you also have to manage your business, and that also needs to grow at the same time. So otherwise you're not hitting the metrics that you're giving to investors. What are some of the habits and routines that you have done, but also that you see your successful founders are doing that's helping them in that process? Every
time I have stress in my life, and I've had lots of stress in my life, I love nature. So, and I love my children and my husband, of course. But I tend to, if I'm really sad, I go for a walk, and I go to the sea, walk by the sea. And I'm very, very good at that. And I think one time I talked to Gitte, who is now at EY, and she said, what you do is you can the minute you started to get really stressed, I can feel that you're pulling back to sort of heal. And so I think that's also a feeling of, okay. But when I lived in Zimbabwe in the civil war, I think I had a little bit of post-traumatic stress afterwards, because I was like an alien for a while. I was so wide awake at night. And it was, and that was probably the most stress. So everything compared to that seems to be easy.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, nothing really compares to civil war.
I mean, you kind of just casually said it like, I mean, back when I was living in the Civil War, then I was a little stressed there. It's like, yeah, you've experienced something for sure.
Yeah.
Classical entrepreneur humbleness.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you should have war boots on if you want to be successful.
And I think that's part like the classic iceberg image that people don't see under the water, right? They just see the success peeking out of the top, but they don't see the hard work, the failures, the people going against you, everything like that. And yeah, it takes a lot. It really does.
Yeah.
What's one indicator that you kind of stick to when you're feeling for stress? Because I think a lot of people, I at least remember the first time that I really burned out, I was walking from one place to the other, and then I was like, what did I even go for? And it was not until that happened that I was like, shit, now it happened to me. But I'm tough. I don't get burned out. I said that to myself, and then I just crashed. But later on, I've started to notice some indicators that's like, oh, you're on the same path here, buddy. Go back up. Yeah. What are some of those indicators for you?
I think I become quite sad. So I can feel that I'm not in a good mood, that I'm, upset easily, that I just I don't have that sort of bubbly feeling inside. And I really would like to have that bubbly feeling inside all the time because it's nice. So I sort of think, okay, calm down. At that time, I didn't go to the office a lot because I knew if I went to the office a lot, I would affect everybody around me. So I tried to sort of, to only come in when I was in a really good mood and I could sort of smile and carry on. But I think that, and in other cases, I have tried to just, go to bed early, feel yourself. And there was a point where I even said, okay, I'm back to yoga because yoga does a lot of good for you.
Yeah.
And you just, unfortunately, I don't have time for yoga. I know that's a ridiculous thing to say. But
you're not prioritizing it.
No, exactly. And then, of course, I like to play tennis. So I would take my husband to the tennis court in the morning at 7 and I would absolutely just hammer balls across the net. Not playing game, nothing, just hammer balls back and forward, imagining that they were a ball. Dang, dang, dang. And that got some frustration out.
That makes a lot of sense.
Also sounds like a pretty fun way to do it.
Rather than getting into a fight.
When you said the thing about coming into work when you're only like contributing with your energy, would you say that you're normally a very optimistic person? And then when you feel the sadness, is that when you can feel that the optimism is starting to decline? So now you're seeing more pessimistic on stuff?
Yeah, that's probably a good way of describing it. I think that I am a very, very optimistic person. And I think I'm also very happy. I'm a happy person, but I'm also very tough. And a lot of people are super scared of me, which I still don't understand why, but they are. And I realized that in my old age. I think that you have to understand what footprint you put on people. And if you have a very strong personality, you can affect other people just by looking at them. And that's not a very nice thing. So I think it's the reason I did those sort of try to feel, okay, am I contributing positively to the day of someone else, was important to me because, they were not fault. It was not their fault that this was going on. So I think it's really important that you understand your own impact on other people and how you affect them. And
when you said tough right there, why do you think that is?
Why people are scared of me?
Yeah.
I don't know, but they are. I mean, everybody tells me, and I'm like, why? But yeah, I'm very, very direct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I will say things as they are. Yeah, and that can hurt. And I'm not getting better. I try to practice having a little bit more filter, and it's not working.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I've decided just to be myself, and people can leave and walk away if they don't like it. But
stick with the authenticity.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I think that, I don't know. But do you think I'm scary?
No, not
Thank
at all.
God.
Yeah. But it's funny because I think me and Travis are very similar to you. And I know from old employees as well that they sometimes felt intimidated. And I think that's also because we are very direct, but it feels that, I don't know where in the childhood that is and where it exists. But for me, directness, it feels as safety. I know where I have you. When you say like, oh, that was annoying that you did this, or next time I would like you to do this because that's the protocol that we're doing it for. I'm not hearing it as, oh, Mikkel, you're not good enough. I'm hearing it as, Anne-Louise is giving me feedback so that I can grow. But I know for some people, that's the reverse. They're hearing it as, you're not good enough. You're not doing what I told you. That's not good enough. And I think for a long time, I tried, as you say, to kind of filter myself, but that ended up working even worse. But what I've figured out now through coaching is find your tribe. Find people who love when you say that. Yeah. They will grow and they will love you for it. And that's something that really stuck with me for some time when that advice was given to you. How do you see that?
I totally agree, and I used to say that I only hire mini-me's, and I even picked a particular education, and I just was very much the same as that. But as you grow, so when you're 100 employees, we're not. But when you go to that, if I look at a startup, I say try and get some more diverse teams.
Yeah.
Get different nationalities, that they're not all from Denmark. And I think one thing that are also really important to me is that a kind of sense of humor, because you need to be able to laugh. I mean, sometimes things are so ridiculous. So you just have to look up and laugh. And I think that's a very important part of it. So yeah, they have to be like you in the beginning. It actually helps you grow the business, I think, if you hire mini-me's. and then as a business matures, you need to sort of make more diverse teams.
Yeah.
But I say Mette is very different to me, but we're very similar.
Yeah.
And we're very aware of that. So we're also talking about an unconscious bias and what don't we see and why did someone see this and we didn't. And so we're trying to improve our own view and trying to see if we have blind angles and blind spots that we should be aware of. But I think that what you said about directness is absolutely true. I don't actually try to say direct things to upset people, but they tend to be really upset quite often.
But sometimes those go a little bit hand in hand. And I think also one observation that I think I've made also is in a startup, like you're going to fail all the time. I'm going to fail. You're going to fail. All the employees are going to fail. The company's going to make mistakes. Like that's just how it is. And then you just got to get back on the horse and go again. And the only way to get back on the horse and go again is every little failure that happens. You got to say that that's not how we do things. This is how we do things, and go again. And I think that happens much more often in a startup compared to a corporate where you have all these standard operating procedures and all these lists to follow and everything like that, because it's just rinse and repeat day in and day out. And then once you start scaling up at some point and you need to get more diverse people, diverse skills, diverse personalities, and you don't have these mini-me's anymore, then the directness starts to hurt people because they're like, hold on a minute, I did the procedure, what's the problem?
And then you have all these scores where you can have personality scores.
Yeah.
And we did that for a team. And there was one that was very, very off the rest of the team. And the psychologist said, there's one in your team that doesn't fit. It's like, okay, we knew, but at least now we had proof that this was a different personality and it didn't really work. And I think that it's worth considering. Why doesn't it work? Mm-hmm. Why is this personality so off compared to the others? And then try and build on the positiveness of the team that works, right? Not the ones that don't.
When you just said that, one thought that just came up is something that we hear a lot is hire for values, not skills. Is that something that you can kind of see when you said you and Mette, you're very similar? Is that in values or is it in your personality, or how is that structured? Because I suppose your skills are different.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question because we are very different and very similar. So it's a very good question. I think values play a really big role, and I think Mette and I and Camilla, by the way, we're probably the same in values. Mm-hmm. We want, and often when we have to make a decision, we're all about what's the right thing to do. We want to minimize risk and minimize reputational risk and minimize. So we're very much about what's the right thing to do, and we discuss that, and we've never, nobody's ever been off the board. We all agree. And skills-wise, I learn a lot from Mette, and I hope she learns some from me. But I have had, maybe because I've traveled so extensively, I'm very good. We call it my psycho alarm. So my psycho alarm. So Mette says, how's your psycho alarm going? And I said, it's not ringing. So we have this where we are good at some things and we follow. And Mette is very, very good at taking a pitch deck apart. She's very good at which board, how governance. She's very good at those things. So we complement each other as well. But we have a full, very, very, very big respect for her and the things she contributes with. So, and that's also another thing. You have to respect your co-founder or your employees for what they are very good at.
Yeah.
And I'm not a micromanaged person at all. As in, I just hope you do a good job because you're smart. Just go do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which they probably do if they're a mini you.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Did you experience any kind of a mindset shift going from a career in like as being a founder to then being in the VC who's investing in founders?
Nah, yeah, I'm glad I didn't know what I was going into because then I would have probably thought I wasn't the right person for it. But as it turns out, I think we are doing really well. Sometimes on paper, things look different to when you actually carry them out. So there was a mind shift in that we took all the skills we had and all the experiences we had, and we plowed them into a venture fund, and that worked. But I don't think if you had done a theoretical analysis of it that you would have come out full score. And I quite. I hope that when we exit, or it's not us, but the investments we made, that when they exit, that we will prove to the world that we were successful. But we had a lot of, in the beginning, we were women, female founders. We felt that we were being discounted for being women. And we decided not to talk about it, which I'm doing now. But because we said, let's talk about it when we've proved that we can invest as women. And so the proof is in the pudding. We're still not out of the woodworks, but it is there are some things where your mind changes and you realize the world works in certain ways, and either you get on the bandwagon or you just try and do things differently. Sometimes you do one, sometimes you do another thing. But you have to. Your mind has to follow what's being expected, but you can challenge it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's just what you said there. It's so interesting to me that you said, let's wait until we've proven it, because Mikkel and I, we've done some companies together and we want to continue to do that. We also have a goal someday to be able to invest in startups as well, because we just love that universe. Like we just love everything about that. And when we look at someone like you, we're thinking like, damn, she's cool. Like, we really want to get to her point someday.
You will, for sure, and I'm not that cool.
But it's like when you sit there and say, we have to wait till we prove it, like from our perspective, it's like, but you have, and it's so cool. And it's a very good message that you have for women and also any young entrepreneur out there who wants to accomplish something and follow their dreams.
For people listening right now, there are entrepreneurs that are looking for money. What are you looking for in your investment companies? Which kind of entrepreneurs, if they're listening to it right now, should send their pitch deck to Vår Ventures and SDG Invest?
For sure, be into our 3 verticals. So we invest in food and agriculture, new solutions, new tech solutions. We invest in energy innovation, and we invest in education and technology. Now, education and technology, we're quite struggling to find good cases. Not because there are a lot of good initiatives and good little businesses, but we fail to see them scale and we fail to see them become unicorns. And we'd like to see more. So if you have a really good tech pitch, please send it, but make sure it can make money. And then, and of course, energy innovation, we are strong in that. We have Heim and Kvartier, and then we have reduced in food and agriculture. So if you're sitting in something like that, where you can see yourself in that space, definitely send it to us. What we bring, and because I think if you have a read like Heim, the first round, they closed without even opening the door to anyone. If you're sitting in a really good, I think what we bring to the table is that we are impact investors. So we have a very strong focus on measuring metrics that are not just financial. We really want you to prove, and we think that that's a lot of value in your A series and B series, if you can also measure the way you improve the world. Be it people, or be it CO2 reductions, or be it something else, fermentation processes that are changing. So you need to think of communicating impact to us as well. Very often we have to write back and say, love your pitch, very good pitch, but we struggle to see the impact. And then they return and they go, well, actually, impact is this. And that's okay, because then we can add some value. But make sure that you are aware of what impact you're making.
So impact, and how does it make money?
Yeah. Actually.
Otherwise, they won't go through the financial screening.
That's true.
Yeah.
Actually, it was really interesting. You gave that example before of the company when the subject on the email was literally like impact, how we make money, and the size of the round. Is that like the best way to reach out to VCs in your opinion? Because sometimes people, they struggle with, what do I put in the subject line? Do I just keep it simple? Do I try to put this long explanation? Like it's so intimidating for people when they've never reached out to investors before. Like, what's a good way to do that? Should they also write like a long email and attach a bunch of stuff to you, or how do you kick that process off?
So I agree that tell me in the subject line what it is I'm looking at, because I get a lot of stuff. And then write a short email. And if you don't want to send your full pitch deck, which I think you should, I'm not going to share with anyone, send a teaser. What a lot of people do is ask you to sign an NDA.
Yeah.
I'll sign an NDA. But honestly, does it work?
Yeah.
Isn't that just to make things, because if it's a really good idea and you founded it, I'm not going to steal it, right? So there are some things where I just, whatever, fine. But I think that I would, if it was me, I'd just send the pitch deck. I would just,
and then in a short text.
Yeah, I'm looking for this much money. I'm hoping to close the round there. I have a lead. I have a term sheet. I have something so that, because the normal questions I send back is, what's the impact? When are you closing the round? Do you have other investors? And they have, we are in with a family office. Which family office? Don't hold your cards too close, because I will find out and I will just bounce back. What is it? And then you have to answer it anyway.
Yeah.
So, and then we like to co-invest, so we don't mind if there's another strong investor, IFO or a family office or someone else. It's perfect.
This has been a really, really interesting talk. On the final note, we have a tradition here on the podcast where we pull a thought-provoking question to end with. We hope that you are going to play with us.
Sure.
So we just see what we get here.
Oh, it's a pot.
Yeah.
Okay, they're pulling a paper out of a pot.
Box of questions, yeah. What is the best quote that comes to mind in this moment, and why? Or is there a quote that you rely on, or that kind of is anything?
I think I have to go with an African quote, since that's where it all started. And I think the English version of it is, if you want to walk fast, walk alone. Or is it? If you want to walk far, walk together. Yeah. And I think that always resonated with me. You're not alone on the journey. Even if you're co-founder, or even me, I'm not alone. I've got some amazing partners, but I also got a whole bunch of network and people in groups that believe in what we do, and that will always be part of the team.
That's beautiful. I can resonate with that. Yeah, it is powerful. It is powerful because, especially in entrepreneurship, then when you because a lot of times founders, they do start alone. You get an idea, you tinker with it, next to whatever else that you're doing, and you can go quite fast alone. But then when you add more people in, you also find out, okay, my idea is actually not that good. I need to like make it better, and and give people with different skills, like you said, find people who are the same but different. You have this, which is, I was actually going to ask you what that meant, but I think you explained it quite well with having similar values but different skill sets to reach the same goal, is the way I interpreted that. And that really seems like a good recipe for going far. I agree.
And some of the things that I just take with me was, one thing that you said about the gut feeling is you should listen to your gut feeling, but you use your gut feeling first, and then you drive it home with data and logic, and then back to the gut feeling. And if they still align, then you go forward. That's something that really resonated with me. And how important communication is from when you're raising money from investors, that you know which kind of investor you're talking to, that you're honest and authentic, and that you share what you are maybe not good at, so that the investor knows, okay, where is it that we can help these people? And then, of course, this has been known before, but get the best lawyer and the best auditor if you're in trouble.
Get that printed on a t-shirt.
And then one thing that's probably the most important thing I would say I take from this podcast is, if you are in a fundraising period right now, it is usually very stressful. And one of your go-tos that I really liked was grounding yourself with nature. I think there's something really powerful in that, and something that I've just noted down, do more nature.
Yeah. I also enjoyed really the curiosity that you led with when you described your travels. And of course, there was some work, motivation behind it, but it takes a lot of curiosity and a lot of courage to live abroad. And I know I'm doing that. I'm living in Denmark. I'm an American here, and also having the courage to actually go for what you want, so you can have a life without regrets, as you also described, and just. We are going to die. We're here for a short amount of time, and whatever you choose to do during that time is 100% up to you. So that was extremely cool, and just sort of that recurring theme of authenticity as well. I've actually seen something recently saying that the energy of authenticity, it's the strongest human energy source that we can make vibration-wise and things like that.
Oh, cool.
So I think it's something like 4 times stronger than what you give off when you're in feeling love even. So it's a very, very strong vibration that you can actually use that actually influences people around you. So
interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So when people try to, I've been tempted before in pitches or whatever to try to be better than I am or whatever, because I think that's what people want, but it's not what they want. They want to see you.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. And obviously proven powerful. 4 times more powerful than love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
As far as the energy put out, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you again for being on our podcast today. It's been an absolute blast talking with you. Learned a lot. And best of luck to you.
Thank you. And best of luck to you. And thank you for inviting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Growing Forward podcast.